founder and president of Bear Down Logistics. A fun fact about Desmond is that he was the leading receiver for the Chicago Bears in Super Bowl 41. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat throughout the session. It seems like the chat is already revved up and ready to go. And at this time, I'm proud to welcome Desmond. Desmond, over to you. Yep, you're still on mute. Can someone take Desmond off mute?
Okay, there we are. There we are. How's everybody doing today? I hope everybody's having a great morning out there to start off this great weekend. And it's a privilege to be with PMI Chicago for this event. And I'm gonna jump right into it because I know I could get into it and I could take some time, and I like to freestyle a little bit. So I want to make this as engaging as possible and leave some time at the end. But today we're here to learn about principles of winning. We got a lot of leaders out here that's joining us right now. And I want to give you 5 principles that I believe in my heart, that if this is the foundation that leadership is being built from, anybody can be a great leader with these 5 principles. But before I get into those principles, I want you to understand where those principles originate from, because a lot of times people, we talk, but we don't have the understanding of the background of where the message is coming from. So I want to give you some of my background, and so you can understand where these principles became consecrated in what I do and how I teach leaders and people that work for me here at Bear Down Logistics. So my start was back in Lakeland, Florida, way back in the day, 1977, which I was born. But Lakeland, Florida is a town that's right in the middle of Orlando and Tampa, right on Interstate 4, if you ever travel through Lakeland. And I just go back to those days, and I think we all have those times where we can look back in our younger age and think about the times when we used to run around in the park thinking, hey, if one day I can be, and I remember when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, running around in the park that we live by, thinking of, man, one day if I can be like Randall Cunningham, if one day I can be like Jerry Rice, if one day I can be like Tony Dorsett, if one day I can be like my favorite athlete, Walter Payton with the Chicago Bears, running around in that park thinking, man, if I can get to the Super Bowl like I seen the Chicago Bears do in 1985, man, those are dreams that I used to think about all the time as a young kid. But now we know when we have those dreams, we also have to deal with reality. And reality was a hard pill for me to swallow very, very young in life. Here's why. Because things went from, hey, having a really good childhood to about 8 years old to everything changing at the drop of a dime, it seemed like. And that first change for me was a change of address. See, because my mom and my father had just split when I was 8 years old. And we went from living in this nice apartment, fun house where we used to have family over all the time, barbecues, go out to the park, softball games, to now we were being evicted from that apartment. My dad was no longer around. He would come and go at different times, but he wasn't there full time. And like I say, that first change for me happened with that change of address, because now we went from this nice apartment to now we went from home to another family home to another family home for about 3 or 4 months. Basically, we were homeless and didn't have our own place to stay. When we finally did settle down in our own apartment, we settled down in this part of Lakeland, Florida, which is still commonly known as the Black Bottom. When we settled down in the Black Bottom, I think that name Black Bottom was the right neighborhood for where we were as a family at that time, because literally we had hit rock bottom. Now, when we got into this apartment didn't have things like we take for granted today. We didn't have lights all the time. We didn't have electricity. We didn't have a refrigerator. When our refrigerator was the Igloo cooler with the white top, that we usually take to the beach or to a picnic or some type of outing like that. Like I just dropped my son off at his basketball game. You know, you take that cooler. That was our refrigerator as kids. And me and my brothers, we would have to go to the store every day and fill that thing up with ice. And that would be what we would keep our whatever food that we had cool so we can consume it at the appropriate time. And it was, man, life was real difficult at this time. Like coming in, no lights, you know, no refrigerator, wearing the tackiest of clothes because that's all that we had, and having to go to school like that. You know, it was around this time of being 9, 10 years old, probably around 9 years old, when I started thinking that in life I was going to have to make a decision. And when you're 9 years old, you shouldn't have to be thinking about what type of life you're going to lead and what type of decisions that you're going to make at 9 years old. But I had started thinking that at that early of an age. But before I had to make that decision, there were a few more things that happened that really made that decision very, very clear to me. So my older brother is like a cult hero to me. So I was 9, he was 15, he's 6 years older than me. And so I know he felt the same way about our situation that I felt about that situation, but he was a little older, so he could do something about it. So he turned to the streets and he started selling crack cocaine. And this is around the same time I made the discovery about my other hero who had fallen, my dad. Because my dad would come in and out the house at different times. You know, he would pop up one day out of the week, and it seemed like every time he would pop up and he would take something out of the house. He would take my mother's ring, or he would take the TV, or he would take whatever that had any value, he would come and take. And I remember this one particular time he came to the house, and my father's not a big man. He's like 5'9". Back in those days, maybe 170 pounds. And I remember this one particular time, and it's always been burnt into my memory. He came in the house, got into an argument with my mom, and he left out. And when he left out, he was walking down the street with a couch on his back. And that's when it finally kind of dawned on me what was going on and why we were in this situation. It finally clicked that my father was a drug addict. My father was a crack addict. And that's why we've seen this fall from, hey, living in a nice apartment to being homeless, to being kicked out, being homeless, now living in the black bottom. And now my mom, she couldn't afford to have lights and have a refrigerator in the home. And it all was because of my father's crack habit. And now I got my two biggest, as a young kid, my two biggest influences. I have my dad, who was my hero and became my hero again after he kicked his crack habit. And then my older brother. He's 6 years older than me. I used to look up to him, still do look up to him. But now I got one that's on crack and I got one that's selling crack. And like I said, it was going to come that time when I was going to have to make that decision about which direction I was going to go in life. All right. But you fast forward. Now you fast forward to 1989. I'm 12 years old. My mom got some form of education. She went to school. She got a job with the Florida Highway Patrol, being a dispatcher. So now things are looking better. She's into another relationship with my stepfather, who was my youngest brother's father, and things are going relatively well now. You know, we're in a home. We're on Section 8, but we got a refrigerator. We got food on the stove every night. We got lights in the house. As soon as you thought that everything was going to be better, a couple things happened. September of 1989, right when my stepfather had moved into the house and had become a real big part of our family, my mom gets a call, and she's 6 months into her job as a Florida Highway Patrol dispatcher. She gets this call at the house, and you could tell something was not right. And she brought us all together. She was like, hey, I need all of y'all to take a seat because I have something to tell you. And what she had to tell us was, hey, your stepfather just got arrested for armed robbery. And for me, that was a blow because now this was a guy that I was looking up to who had a lot of influence over me. And now he's gone, eventually sentenced to 15 years in prison. And now my mom is left with 4 boys that she got to raise all on her own with a 2-month-old baby. But then the next month, almost 1 month later, we get more news. My mom comes in the house and she's crying and you just know that something is wrong. And she tells us this time, she's like, hey, I hate to tell you guys this, but your father, he's been shot. And for me, most people, when they hear the news that their father has been shot, it's you take a deep breath, you sigh, you wonder what's going on. But for me, I didn't have any of those reactions. My reaction was this: oh, well, he'll be okay, just like he was the other 2 times that he had been shot, because now this was his 3rd time being shot. But this time it was totally different. It was totally different this time. If you know anything about shotguns, you have to load those shells into the shotgun barrels. And when you squeeze that trigger, and when the guy who shot my father squeezed that trigger from across the road from the porch that he was standing on at a crack house, it ejected those pellets, and those pellets come out in a certain circumference. And when those pellets got to him, they hit him in the face and hit him in both of his eyes. And my father has been blind since October 17th, 1989. Now, for me, that was the most traumatic time of my life, starting there for these next 3 years. I used to walk around in my home with a towel tied around my head, with anything over my eyes, just trying to understand, how do you live life blind? For me, life was like over. Like, how can you live life blind? And I could never wrap my head around that. Now, my father, he's in the hospital and he's recuperating and he's recovering from his gunshot wounds. But the one thing that he didn't recover from was his drug addiction. Now, my father's back home, back living with his grandmother, my great-grandmother. And just imagine this for a second. Imagine being blind, and imagine having a drug habit, a crack habit, and you got to light that crack pipe. You got to hold that crack pipe, put the crack on it, and then light the crack. That could be pretty difficult for a blind person to do. So whenever I would be at my grandmother's home, my great-grandmother's home, and my father wanted to get high, he would pull me into the back room and he would have me light his crack pipe for him. And I did this for years, for about 2 to 3 years. Now, that is a very graphic scene. And I don't understand what goes on in the head of a crack addict once they smoke. But what I do understand is that once they take a hit of that drug, they are no longer here with us on earth in the mental form. They're somewhere else. And to watch that, week after week when I'm over to my grandmother's house, that did something to my soul. And it was this one particular time I had lit my father's crack pipe and I walked out of that back room, and my dad had these crack addicts, and then he had this one drug dealer there at my grandmother's house. And by the way, my great-grandmother knew nothing that was going on here. She was a hardworking lady and she would walk back and forth to work. But my father had these drug addicts and these couple drug dealers at the house, and these drug dealers, they were cooking crack on the stove, and they pulled me over and they said, hey, let me show you how you can make you some money. Let me show you how you can help your family out. Let me show you how you can get out of those XJ900 shoes, to pay less specials and get yourself some Jordans. Back in those days, if you had some Jordans, you were it. You were the man. So he was talking all of my language. Let me show you how you can get some money so you can buy yourself some better clothes. And for me, where I went to school at, if you was a drug dealer, you were the guy. All the girls liked you. You had the car, you had the jewelry, and all that stuff. So he was speaking to me, trying to entice me with those type of things. And I remember walking out of that house, and I remember walking back home that day. And now I'm 14 years old now. And as I was walking back home that day, it's like one of those cartoons where you have the devil on one shoulder and you have the angel on the other shoulder. And I was having this conversation, and the devil was telling me, hey man, look, you don't have to go to school being the dark-skinned, dirty kid anymore. I mean, you could go and sell some crack. Your brother did it, and now he's moved on. He didn't get in trouble. He's not dead or in jail. He did it for a little while, and then he went on with his life. Now you can go to school and you can have nice things. Now you could, be in the in crowd. You could be popular. All of those things that the devil was saying. But I remember as I got closer to getting home, the angel voice was just softly saying, you don't want to be another disappointment to your mom. You don't want to be another disappointment to your mom. And I told you guys earlier that I was going to have to make a decision in life on which way I wanted to go. And it was at that moment, before I walked into the house that day, that I made that decision. And when I walked into the house that day, I went directly to my mom's room. And I said, Mom, I'm going to be successful. And everybody's old enough, maybe on this video, to have kids. And you tell your kids, of course you're going to be successful. You encourage them. But I didn't want that at that point. I wanted her to understand my determination and my conviction for what I had decided that day, that I am going to be successful, Mom. And I told her again, and I meant every word of it. But for me, what was success? I didn't see success. For me, at that point, success was graduating high school, going to college, and getting a good job. But I can tell you from that day, I don't think it's irony. I don't think it's happenstance. I think when you make a decision to move forward on something and you have no other thoughts about anything else, but I'm going to get this done no matter what, things start to happen for you. You start to think differently. You start to think more positively. You open yourself up to different ideas. And for me, those things came in the form of people. They came in the form of coaches. And I always talk about my Coach J's, Coach Jones, Coach Jackson, Coach Joe, Coach Joyner. Those are my middle school and high school basketball and football coaches. And I can tell you, without those men, I wouldn't be in front of you today. Those men were able to shape me, help me, mold me, teach me the things that I needed to be taught in order to become successful. And I'll give myself a little bit of credit. I was open to them doing that. But once I got to high school, this is where everything opened up, because I seen that path to the promise that I had made of being successful. When I got to high school, I seen kids like Ray Lewis signing letters of intent to go play college football and go play college basketball. And I said, that's it. That's my path. That is my path. That's how I can get to college, because Mom can't pay for it. Dad can't pay for it. None of my family could pay for it. Matter of fact, I didn't know any of my family who had even been to college at that point. That was my path. So I became the most competitive person on the football field, on the basketball court, because I knew that I had to get that scholarship. I had to go and get that scholarship. And now you fast forward to my senior year, and then they threw this thing out there, which I had no clue about. They say you got to have a certain GPA. It's like, oh man, y'all could have told me that when I was in the 9th grade. I would have been hustling a little bit harder here. But because I had to get my GPA up, I was student of the month once in my senior year. Only made 2 B's that whole year. Everything else was A's. And I got my GPA up to a level that now I'm eligible to go to college. I was all-state in both football and basketball. And in the great state of Florida, when you're all-state in football, the college coaches come knocking. and I had dozens of football schools, a dozen of universities come knocking on my door, but I chose to go to Wake Forest University to be a student athlete. And when I got to Wake Forest University, I just felt blessed because here I am at this prestigious university, and I have this opportunity not only to play football, but also I have an opportunity to get my degree and fulfill that promise that I made to my mom. And so with all of that gratitude and a little bit of attitude, I took that out on the field and I played my heart out every week on that football field. I gave everything that I had. I gave effort in that classroom so I could keep my grades to where they needed to be. And I'm not ashamed to say that the only reason that I got good grades in high school and I was able to achieve decent grades in college is so I could stay on that football field, so I could stay on the basketball court. I think that's why we do things, because we're motivated by something to do it. And that was my motivation. But with that gratitude and with that attitude that I played college football with, I became all-time ACC leading receiver. Man, all-time ACC leading receiver. And when you do when you put up those type of numbers in a Power 5 conference, guess who comes calling next? It's the NFL. They come calling next. And it was April 19th, 1999, a day before my 22nd birthday. We are in the 6th round of the draft, and I'm thinking, well, maybe I don't get drafted. There's only 7 rounds of it. So maybe I don't get drafted. But in the 6th round, we got a phone call from Mike Shanahan. And Mike Shanahan got on the phone and he said, hey, Desmond, how would you feel being a Denver Bronco? I was like, Mike, that'd be a dream come true. And with that, Mike said, hey, we're going to give you a call tomorrow, but right now we're going to draft you. You hold tight. We'll get back with you tomorrow, tell you everything that you needed to know. And then a few seconds later, you're seeing on the ticker, Denver Broncos draft Desmond Clark. And with that, the party started. Everybody's kissing, hugging, patting me on the back. There's about 30 people in my mom's apartment at that time. And I can recall after everything kind of simmered down just a little bit, looking at my mom over sitting on the couch with a smile on her face. And that smile meant everything for me, because I had made a promise. I had made a decision that I was going to be successful. And I felt like at this point, I had fulfilled that promise. But for me, that was just the start. And I know that, hey, this is PMI Chicagoland, and we may have some people from other places here. So welcome in if you're not from Chicagoland, but Chicago is my second home. And we got a bunch of Bear fans in here, I'm sure. And on January 27, 2007, that's when we played the NFC Championship game against the New Orleans Saints. And I could recall, man, I only made one catch that game, but it was a seam route down the middle. I remember watching that ball floating that Rex Grossman threw, and it was the perfect pass, perfect catch for about 30 yards right down the middle. And I got up and I celebrated like it was no tomorrow. And right around the 3rd quarter, going to the 4th quarter, we had just started to pull away. And it was like a fairy tale ending to that game as the snow was falling. And it wasn't too cold. It was about 29, 30 degrees. And we beat the New Orleans Saints 39-14. And I remember having that trophy ceremony where we had the NFC Championship trophy. And it was when it was my turn to hold it, I had my family there, I had friends there. And as I'm holding that trophy, all I could think about was, this is what I was dreaming about when I was a young kid playing in that park, dreaming that, hey, if one day I can be. Well, one day had finally gotten here, and we were off to play in the Super Bowl. Now, I'm going to keep the next part short because it still hurts me. We went to the Super Bowl, and we lost. End of story. That's all I got to say about that. If you see me sometime on the street, one-on-one, maybe I can talk about it in a little bit of detail, but to this day, I still haven't watched that game because I'm still hurt by that game. But it was 3 weeks later when I was sitting at my home and really just contemplating life, because I had just played in the Super Bowl. Like, how did that happen? Where did all this come from? Like, what did I do? What had to happen for me to get there? Because I really felt like even though we lost, I had achieved a great deal of success. And I told my mom that I was going to be successful. And I wanted to review that in my life. And when I started to review my life, that's when principles of winning came about. Because I looked at all of the principles that I was taught. And I said, all of these principles had so much influence on who I became and who I was still becoming, that I felt like, hey, these things need to be the core of my leadership, the core of my life, and the core of everything that I do. And that's why I teach these, because I know that they work. I know that, hey, good leaders have these qualities, because I've seen it in all the leaders that was able to lead me and help me transition into being a leader myself. So I'm gonna start with that first one. And we have 5. The first principle of winning is this: all you have is your name and your word. Now, Coach Joe gave me that one. And Coach Joe gave me that one after, oh man, I was the quarterback on my high school team. And as a quarterback, you are like the de facto leader. But I didn't have a whole lot of leadership qualities at that time. And this was springtime, where the coaches, they can't be out on the football field with us. So he came to the leader of the team and said, hey, get all of these guys out there on the football field, do your 7-on-7, get a practice in, and make sure that you guys are staying in shape. So I said, Coach, I got you. I'll get the guys out. We'll do that. That day came and went. I didn't get the guys out. Matter of fact, I was somewhere playing basketball. So the next day, Coach Joe seen me. He was like, hey, what happened yesterday? Sorry, Coach, I didn't get in contact with the guys. I didn't get them out. Again, get these guys out there. We need to get these practices in, and I'm relying on you to do it, Desmond. Get the guys out. Got you, Coach. Well, the next day, same thing. I don't get the guys out. I'm playing basketball again. And at this point, the next day, I know that, hey, Coach Joe, he's not going to stand for this. And so I started dodging Coach Joe. And I dodged Coach Joe for 2 days. I dodged him for 2 days. But on that third day, when I came back to school, I was walking down the hallway, and I turned and I took a turn. And as I took a turn, who was walking down the hallway coming in the opposite direction? And we locked eyes, and I was like, oh, damn, it's about to go down, because Coach Joe is not a small man. Coach Joe is 6'2". Back in those times, he was about 265, 270, and Coach Joe has a mean streak. And so I love Coach Joe, like one of the biggest influences in my life. So I don't want to say that Coach Joe, and if you coach these days, don't try this at home, and don't try this out on the field or the basketball court or with the guys today. You will get in trouble. I don't want to say Coach Joe choked me. What I'm going to say is that Coach Joe applied pressure around my neck in a loving way, a very loving way, where my feet was off the ground. So Coach Joe, once he finally let me touch the ground again, he told me this. He said, son, in this life, all you have is your name and your word. And once you lose that, you've lost everything. Now, how does that apply to you being in the business world? I don't care if you're a leader or someone who is working in a different department and don't have a leadership position. This applies to everyone, because your name and your word, that is your brand. That's who you are. Let me see some names on here. I mean, we got Yvette Bradley on here. We got Shannon Dahl. Some other names that we have on here. Oh man, I just messed that up. Let me go back to the other screen. Aneta, I believe that is, Anita. When people say your name, there's a slight emotional reaction that comes when people say your name to other people, if they know you. Whether you know it or not, people have a reaction to when they say your name. But here's the deal. What do you want people to feel when they mention your name. So there's two things that you really have to do. Just like any brand, Nike, Walmart, WeWork, anything that has a name, that's a brand. And you have a certain thought when you say Walmart. You think about inexpensive, low prices for things that you get. When you think about Burberry, you think about a certain thing. What do you want people to associate your name with? The first thing you have to do is define that for yourself. And especially as a leader, you have to define what your name is going to mean for your leadership. And it has to be something that you can stand on. And once you define what your name is going to mean to you first, to you, hey, who am I going to be as this leader? Who am I going to be as Desmond Clark? Who am I going to be as John Davis? What is that going to mean to me, first and foremost? Once we understand that, now we got to understand, what do we want that to mean to everyone else? What do we want that to mean to everyone else? And we can't make people think anything. We can't make people think, what they don't want to think. But what we can do is influence how they think about us. With every interaction that we have, every time they see you, every time they have contact with you, you get to influence your brand type, your name, and the emotional reaction and the feeling that people have when your name is mentioned. If you have a bad name, you've lost it all. If you have a great name, man, you've gained it all. Because a great name will take you far. So the first principle is, all you have is your name and your word. First, define it for yourself. What do you want that to mean? Secondly, now what do you want that to mean to everybody else? Principle number 2 is this. And I love this one because my mom, when we were in that dark apartment and we used to come in, my mom would always say, hey, as long as we have us, we have enough. And when I was young, it didn't make sense to me because we didn't have anything. And she would say, as long as we have us, we have enough. But as I got older and as things got better, man, I look back on that time and she was right. As long as we had us, we had enough, because that was our community. That was those relationships that we had within that apartment with my brothers and my mom were the closest relationships that I ever formed in life. And then as I got older, I started to think, and this is right around that 3-week period of the Super Bowl, I was thinking about this. How did we get to where we are with what we had? Because we didn't have much. But we always had each other. And we always pushed each other. We always encouraged each other to do better, to do more, to be more excellent, to be just to go out and get it. And I started thinking, well, if I was able to create what we were able to create together, what happens if us becomes all of us who are on this call? What if us becomes everybody within my offices that I worked in, all of my teammates? What if this whole world became us? What couldn't we achieve together? But to do that, we have to understand principle number 2, the power of relationships. How do you develop powerful relationships? I want to give you 5 things that is basically it's the foundation of building relationships. Number 1 is this: you always have to bring a positive aura to a relationship. I mean, if you like being around negative people, let me see your hand go up in the air and say a good hell yeah. Sorry about that, but I know nobody's gonna raise their hand and say hell yeah on that one, because who likes to be around a negative person? So it just tells you, hey, bring a positive aura with you when engaging with people. And I know that we're human and sometimes we have things going on and we can't always be happy-go-lucky all the time, but in general, bring a positive aura to relationships. And number two is this: bring value or create value in a relationship. Well, how do you create value within a relationship? Well, if I go out and I'm talking to you and I get to understand who you are and I get to understand what's important to you, then I know it's valuable to you. Now I can help you along the way to bring about those things that's important to you, to help you do those things that's important to you. One of the things that I do when I interview people here for Bear Down Logistics is I ask them, what are your 1, 3, and 5 year goals or your vision for the next 1 to 3, 5 years? And I tell people, if they can't articulate that, I can't hire them, because I want to know how I can be of value, how Bear Down Logistics is going to be of value to them. What can I do and how can I use this platform so I could create value for you? We have to create value in relationships. Everybody wants to be valuable. Everybody wants to be a person of value. And the greatest way to be a person of value is to create value for others. And now you'll always be a person of value. And number three is this one right here. And in this society that we live in right now, this is huge. And the third basic thing that we have to do to create powerful relationships is have no judgment. No judgment, or you could say / be curious. We got to be curious about people. We live in a society right now that is all headlines, is 75 characters, is, hey, give me 1 minute of this, and now I think I have an understanding of who this person is and what they're about. That's not true. If you would have met me at the age of 15 and you would have seen me for a minute or just a day, maybe you wouldn't have understood who I was deep down inside if you don't take the time to understand me like my coach Jays did. My coach Jays took time to understand who I was and what I really wanted out of life, even though I was a little rough around the edges. They didn't have any judgment about me. They got to know me. They were curious. And then they discovered and found that, hey, somewhere in this kid, there's a diamond. And they wanted to help this kid be a diamond because they didn't have judgment. They was just curious about who I was, first and foremost, to get to know me. No judgment, be curious. The fourth is this, and I love this one because I think this is who I am as a person. Be encouraging and be challenging of people. You hear sometimes people say, oh man, I just like being around that person, but they can't really put a finger on why they want or like to be around a certain person. And usually that comes down to that person makes you feel or makes them feel good about themselves, and that person brings out the best in them. Usually those are the two things that make other people want to be around you. You make them feel good about themselves. That's being encouraging. And then you bring the best out of them. That's being challenging. So if you could be encouraging and be challenging all at the same time, man, you're going to be the person that everybody wants to have a great relationship with. And then last is this: we got to be consistent and we got to be reliable. We got to be consistent and we got to be reliable. Can't be up one day, down the next day. Hey, going 50% today, 75 tomorrow, 125 the next day, and then you're back down to 0. We got to be consistent and we got to be reliable, especially as a leader. Especially as a leader. One of the things that I like to say as a leader, we have to be the thermostat. We can't be the thermometer. Well, the thermometer has to go around and check everybody's temperature, you know. As a leader, we have to be the thermostat. We got to come in and we got to set the thermostat at whatever temperature we're going to have it at and be consistent and be reliable every single day as a leader. Be the thermostat. Don't be the thermometer. Be consistent and reliable. And with these 5 things, I believe that is just the basis of creating really powerful relationships, which is principle number 2. Principle number 3, I used to say, have a commitment to excellence, but I changed that. I changed that one. And if I write part 2 of my book, I'm gonna change it because I developed something else. Like I developed this, engage into the process of greatness. The process of greatness. A lot of businesses, they have what do you call it? Core values. I don't have core values. I have the process of greatness because I believe that everybody, every single person, and as a leader, you need to understand this. Every single person has greatness within them. And as leaders, it's up to us to bring it out of them. But when you talk about greatness, people kind of shy away. What? I'm not great at anything. You know, what can I be great at? You know, what would make somebody think that I'm great? Greatness is within everyone, but you got to understand how you develop greatness. And this is the process of greatness. Execute the details in excellence consistently over time. Now think about that. I'll say it again. Execute the details in excellence consistently over time. There's 5 parts to that. Now think about anybody or anything that you consider as being great or establishing greatness or displaying greatness. Those 5 things are in place. The execution was there. They got it done. They got the details right. They did it in excellence. Like they didn't just do it, but they did it at a high standard. And they did it consistently. They didn't do it one day and then do it the next day, do it 2 days and then don't do it the third. They did it consistently at a high level, very detail oriented. And they finished the job from beginning to the end. And they did it over a long period of time. And over that long period of time, people started to notice, started to be like, man, that person, that industry, that company, they're great at what they do. But it didn't happen overnight. Greatness, understand this, greatness is not something that we can say about ourselves. I never go out and I never will go out and be like, oh man, Desmond, man, I am great. Greatness is an outside validation because we're always in the process of greatness. And as a leader, that's what we have to tell the people who we are charged to lead, is that we have to stay in the process of greatness. We have to execute the details in excellence consistently over time. Tell me who can't do that. Tell me who does not have the ability within their own job, within their own life, as a parent, as whatever you do. Tell me who can't do that. Execute the details in excellence consistently over time. We all have greatness in us once we understand how we really cultivate greatness. We just got to decide that we want to stay in that process. And as leaders, we have to encourage, we have to motivate, we have to get people to understand that greatness is within them. And all they have to do is decide that they want to be great at something. Number 4 is this. The 4th principle is being self-motivated. Now, what does that really mean? Being self-motivated. I think a lot of times we are other people motivated. We look at Sally to set our bar. Well, Sally's not as good. I'm better than Sally, so therefore I feel good about myself. Well, Joe is really good. There's no way I can be a great leader or a great salesperson like Joe because Joe is the best of the best. I would never be Joe. Well, maybe you won't be Joe. And maybe, you're better than Sally. But who cares? It doesn't matter. Here's what matters. And I learned this my first training camp with the Denver Broncos in 1999. Now, this is the 2-time world champion Denver Broncos. They had just come off of 2 world championships, back-to-back championships. And now here I am, a 6th-round tight end. Never played tight end in my life. I was a receiver in college, a quarterback in high school, and I get drafted to the highest league in the land to play tight end. Now they have 3 great tight ends. Shannon Sharp, look him up, Hall of Famer. I mean, he's one big muscle. I mean, I'm not Shannon Sharp. I'll just look me up and then look up Shannon Sharp, and you'll say the same thing I'm saying. No, he's definitely not Shannon Sharp. Hall of Famer, Dwayne Carswell. This dude nickname to this day, and especially back then, is House. Okay, you don't understand. His name is House. If his nickname is House, my nickname is Studio Apartment. That's 2 out of 3. Byron Chamberlain is the next upcoming tight end, and they're grooming him to be the next Shannon Sharp. Matter of fact, he went on to play in Minnesota and became a Pro Bowler or All-Star with Minnesota. Dwayne Carswell, after Shannon Sharp left, became a Pro Bowler with the Denver Broncos. And this is who I got to compete with? And only keep 3 tight ends? There is no way I'm making this team. There is no way I'm making this team. I've never played this position before. And that's what I was thinking the whole time. I was self-sabotaging from the very beginning because I was looking at these individuals to set my own bar. And because I thought they were so great, I set my bar so low. In that first week, I performed just like I had set my bar. And I had this scout come to me, and good thing, man, I encountered some really good leaders. And this guy, he took it upon himself to come over and just share some leadership knowledge with me. He said Desmond, here's what I need you to do. Quit competing with those guys because you're not as good as them. And at first I was like, well, thanks for the advice. But he didn't mean it that way. He said, you're not as good as them now. You're not as good as them now. What you need to do is to go back to your room and decide how good do you want to be? How good do you want to be? Regardless of House, Byron Chamberlain, Shannon Sharp, they don't matter. How good do you want to be at what you do? And then he said this. He put his hand up, how good do you want to be? Then he said, now tell yourself, how good are you? And he said, what you need to do is don't come out here to this practice without a game plan to get better. Get better on one single thing every single day. He said, every single day. Get better at one thing every single day. Have a focus on what you want to get better. He said, before you know it, how good you want to be, you'll eventually be there. And that was one of the best pieces of advice that I've ever gotten as a professional athlete, because I stopped focusing on everybody else. And I started focusing on developing myself to be the best I can be. Now, tell me if you disagree with this statement. If you are being the best that you can be, if you're bringing 100% of yourself to the table, can you ask more of yourself? Can anybody ask more of you? They can't, because you're bringing everything. You're bringing your top self. And that's what I mean by being self-motivated. Maybe you're not Shannon Sharp, but we had a 7th-round tight end also. But I'm better than him. But what I have to do is just not compare myself to anybody and just make myself the best version of me that I can bring to the table every single day. As a leader, we have to push our people to be the best version of themselves every single day. And how can we get beside them and coach them to be the best version of themselves every single day? And not focus on anybody else, but keep them in the zone of being self-motivated. The last principle is principle number 5. And this last principle is having a passion or having a passionate purpose. All right, what did you do it for? And again, there's a lot of leaders on this call. Why did you take a leadership position? Why? And that's something that you should, if you haven't explored it, you should explore it. I mean, of course, there's an increase of pay, or, why did you take the position that you're in, even if you're not in a leadership position? And that's why I always ask anybody who I hire, what is that 1 to 3 to 5 year goal? Or what is that vision? Because I want the people who I'm around to develop a vision for themselves. They have to have a vision, and I'll help them create that vision if they don't. But they have to have a vision, because without a vision, you're probably not going to have any passion for the work that you got to do every day. Because when you come with the vision every day and understand that the work that you're doing is helping you to walk into that vision that you have for yourself, now it's not work, or it's not the bad definition of work. You know that you're working towards something every single day. Now you can get up understanding, man, I'm about to go out here and I'm about to kick ass, because I know a year from now where I want to be. I know 3 years from now, if I come into this office and I come in here and I dominate my space and I dominate my business, and what I mean by that, we're all a business. We're all individual businesses. Let me define what a business is. A business is when you offer a product or a service for exchange of pay. That's what we all do. We're all a business. You have your own individual business. Even if you're a secretary, even if you're a janitor, to being the CEO, you are a business within yourself. Like Jay-Z said, I'm not a businessman, I am a businessman and woman. You are a business. And your business is going to take you to the vision that you have. So what is that vision that you have? That you can get up every day and say, I'm going to create the best damn business that I can create, that I'm getting exchange of pay for, so I can take that pay and let it help create the vision that I have, and walk into that vision with as much passion as you can, as much purpose as you can, because I got a passion and a purpose. My purpose is that family that counts on me every day. My passion is to see everybody, and I'm in my office, one of my offices right now, these guys that come in here every day, my passion is to see these guys walk into their vision. My passion is to make sure that, hey, how do you want to take care of your family? Do you understand that how this opportunity, how this platform can help you do that? And if I can't provide that platform for them, then it's not the right mix. So I'm passionate every day that I come in here and I talk to these gentlemen, because I know exactly what they're trying to get accomplished. And I know that what they're trying to get accomplished is help me get accomplished what I want to get accomplished. And therefore, we work together passionately as a team. So number 5 is have a passionate purpose about why you get up every day, why you decide to lead every day. Why do you come in and work on your individual business every day? That's principles of winning. And in review, let's go over them one more time. Number 1 is all you have is your word and your name. That is your brand. Define it for yourself, and then define it what you want it to mean to other people. Number 2 is this: the power of relationships. Make sure that you're bringing positive energy. Make sure that you're creating value, no judgment. Make sure that you're being encouraging and challenging, and then make sure that you're being consistent and reliable to create those powerful relationships that we must have in order to be the best success that we can be. Number 3 is this: engage into that process of that process of greatness, where we execute the details in excellence consistently over time. We all can do that. We have greatness. Everybody have greatness within us. And we got to make the people who we lead understand that they have that, because everybody can do what I just said. Everybody can engage into that process of greatness. And it's not going to be easy. It's going to take time, but we all have the ability to do it. Number 4 is this: have people understand that they got to be self-motivated and not other people motivated. We got to be self-motivated. And again, what I mean by that, we have to develop ourselves to bring our best self to the table. And if we could bring our best self to the table, there is nothing that you can ask of yourself, you can ask more of yourself, or anybody else can ask more of you, because we are bringing our best self to the table. And we're not worried about if it's better than that person or is it less than that person, because all you can do is what you can do. And if you do that, you put yourself in the best position to win every single day. Will you take some losses? Maybe. But if you do that, you're going to be in the best position to win every single day. And the last thing is this: have a passionate purpose. Why do you get up? Why do you do this? Why? What are you doing it for? What are you doing it for? What's that vision? And understand that you are a business. And every day that you come into that office, every day that you get on that Zoom call, you are a business. Make your business the best business that it can be for the purpose that you want it to serve for you. And that's Principles of Winning. And I appreciate the time and opportunity to speak at PMI Chicago.
Wow. Thank you so much, Desmond. That was truly inspiring. I've been monitoring the chat a little bit here. We've been getting some great comments and how you're really encouraging the audience on today. And we've learned so much from your presentation. Just a few couple of things that stuck out to me is that we understood that our name and our word is our personal brand. We have to really know that that is what is our foundation. You talked about powerful relationships, just the many relationships over time, whether they're negative and whether they're positive. Those relationships really drove your leadership. And then also everyone has greatness. That's one of the main things, is that everyone has greatness. And so I'm going to quickly transition it to my colleague, Nick Hart, who will ask some of the questions that's in our Q&A box.
All
Nick?
right.
Thanks, Katrina. Thank you, Desmond, for the great talk. We have several really great questions here and about 9 minutes to answer them. First one is, how did you or do you cope with jealousy from your teammates or coworkers when you were succeeding?
I guess, no. Jealousy is something that I really never kind of felt because of that whole being self-motivated. I never had a contract dispute. I never looked at somebody else and be like, oh man, this dude he's getting more than me. It's because I understood for myself what I'm trying to accomplish. What they're doing or not doing is not going to help me now. Okay, in college, I used to get upset with my teammates. And I used to get upset with my teammates that were not working as hard as they needed to be working, because we used to get beat on every week. Now, if you're on my team, I'm gonna make you bring it, right? And if you're not bringing it, now I may have a little animosity, and I'm just being serious, and authentic. But if other than that, I've never really had a problem with any of my teammates. But I just feel like if we're all trying to accomplish something together, don't be the weak link. Don't be the weak link in the chain. And you know that everybody can't perform to the levels of everybody else, and there's going to be differences, right? So you got to understand that part of it too. When somebody's giving 100%, they're giving 100%, and you can't grade somebody else on somebody else's grade scale.
Thank you, Desmond. Next question. What can you do to pull yourself out of survival mode and to allow time for a vision to show up? Most times we're too busy working, doing a job, and forget the vision.
Right. Well, I think the first thing is you almost got to work backwards. You got to create the vision. Even if you're in survival mode, you have to create the vision of where you want to go. Because if you don't have the vision, you'll stay in survival mode way too long. Because once you get the vision, now you just got to reverse engineer it. And how do I get to that point that I'm trying to get to? And I'm not saying that this is easy at all. I've been in survival mode a few times. It's going to come down to whether you're ready to or willing to make tough sacrificial decisions that you have to make when you're in survival mode, as opposed to, hey, you're in a different space. Because usually in survival mode, it's going to take a couple of different difficult decisions for you to get out of that. And you got to be willing to do that. One of the things that I always say is everybody wants to be good or great or wants to make a lot of money or want, whatever that is. But it's the people that are willing to do what's necessary that will actually get there, because everybody wants it, but everybody is not willing. And that's the difference that separates those people who actually make it and don't make it, when it just comes down to pure work ethic and, not outside forces.
Yes, we all have to go into survival mode at some point in our lives. The key is how you show up and how you move forward. The next question is, how did the NFL evolve during your career? Did you think the changes were good for the game, fans, players? In the next few years, how would you like to see the NFL innovate itself?
Oh man, I'm in a different space now, so that's not really my focus. But I can talk about how it evolved from when I came in from 1999 to 2011, my last season. It became a game where I think the players, there was more emphasis on the player safety. I think that's the biggest evolution of the game now is really having a focus on player safety. In 1999, playing here in Jacksonville, I'm in Florida right now, I was on a kickoff and I got knocked out cold. Like, all I remember is my man House saying, "Just stay down, Des." And then I woke up and I was on a sideline to a trainer waving fingers in my face. And then I came to, okay, you got 3 fingers or whatever it was. And I went back in the game. And I was knocked out cold. That would never happen in today's game. So I believe that's the biggest evolution of the game. In football, I would want to see players start to have more power, but it's different in football because you got so many different players. It's not like baseball or basketball where there's less players and they have more control. But I would love to see the NFL players stick together more so they can have more control and more decision-making ability for the game of football.
Thank you, Desmond. I think we have time for 1 or 2 more questions. How did the clarity and communication of your vision as you developed yourself inspire transformation or change in others?
I'll just talk about what I'm doing here now. I clearly tell these people that come in and the employees that I work with here, hey, I want to build a $100 million revenue company within 5 years. And I tell them step by step how I want to do it and the plan on doing it so they can see that. And then I use that also as a recruiting tool because now I want to know their vision and I want to understand, how does this bigger vision that I have match up with your individual vision that you have? And now my whole thing is I want to be able to change lives. I want somebody to come in here from another company or from the first time that they're doing this and see, well, wow, man, I can really develop something for myself. With Bear Down Logistics, every employee has the opportunity to earn equity within the company. So they are able to not only to get a check from week to week, but they also are able to build a company in which they share equity. And I believe that's how capitalism should be. I mean, when people put blood, sweat, and tears into their job, and they help to build this whatever company, they should also get a piece of the company. They help build it. And for everyone who walked through these doors, they understand that part of the vision that they can now implement into their own vision is that, hey, if I come in here and I kick ass and I do what I'm supposed to do and I produce like I say I can produce at Bear Down Logistics, not only am I going to make a great income, but I'm gonna actually be an owner of something that I'm helping to build. And I think that's only right. So that's how I use my vision of what I'm trying to build and accomplish to help change lives of the people who I get connected to through Bear Down Logistics.
Thank you so much, Desmond. That will have to be the last question. I'll pass the floor back to Katrina.
Thank you, Nick. And thank you, Desmond, for taking some time to answer our questions. There are
Absolutely.
more questions in the chat. So what we'll do is we'll send them to Desmond and then have Desmond answer them and send them back to the audience.
Hey,
And
Katrina,
so,
can I just say this really quick?
yes.
If you guys have questions on me, I would love to connect with each of you on LinkedIn. So once we have a break, connect with me on LinkedIn. You can send your questions over there also, or Katrina can send them to me and I will take time to answer it, and I will take time to connect with you on LinkedIn.
Great. That's great, Desmond. And if you get a chance, just send me that your LinkedIn link, and then we'll put that in the chat for everyone. But Desmond, as we come to a close, I just want to thank you again just for your truly inspirational message on today. We have some great comments. As I mentioned, one comment that I thought was funny was that I was not expecting to relate to an NFL player. So that shows you that your message is definitely something for everyone, and we do appreciate that. So as a token of our appreciation, the chapter would like to present you with a certificate to show you that we really do appreciate your time, and that will also be emailed to you after the event.
Thank you so much.
No problem. So thank you to our audience for your attendance and for participating in today's conversation, giving your input and your questions. There will be a raffle at the end of the total event. And just remember, if you are being part of the raffle, you also have to be present during the drawing. So don't forget that. And then also don't forget to submit your survey on Desmond's presentation. Thank you again, and we'll see you all in 10 minutes for Michael Leedy's presentation. Please download the program book if you haven't done so already. See you back in 10 minutes.